welcome everybody to the U.S. Superyacht Association's ongoing education series. I'm Diane Byrne, the chair of the Education Committee and the vice chair of the USSA. Glad to see so many people here and so many people who are interested in being mentors and being mentored. We first want to make sure we thank our sponsor, which is Marine Group Boat Works. They are helping to make this type of programming possible. And we know that Leah Yam, who was with Marine Group Boat Works, is very much an advocate for mentoring, so we thank her for that as well. Today's topic, of course, is mentoring and making a difference. If you've attended our previous webinars, then you're going to notice something a little bit different today. Julia Russell is here from GMT. She is actually our co-moderator. Julia is also a member of Young Professionals in Yachting, and she is moderating because Young Professionals in Yachting and the USSA have joined forces for a formal mentoring program. Some of you have already signed up for it, which we thank you for. And for the rest of you, we hope that you come away from this presentation with some real inspiration on how you can help someone in their career, or if you are looking for guidance in your career, you will get that guidance. We're really excited about pairing many of you together and making a big difference. So without further ado, our panelists who will be discussing their experiences on both the mentor and mentee side are Bob Saxon of Bob Saxon Consultancy, Rafael Betts of Pantropic.
Good morning.
There's Rafael. Thanks, Rafael. Brant Kraft of Kraft Yacht Management, and Katie Hagen and Richard Grennan, who are both of FHG Engineering. So Julia, why don't you start with kind of how the mentoring program started very much with YPY, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, sure. So hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us on this fine Thursday. Most of you are probably still working, but some may be watching this on holiday already on a boat somewhere down the Keys, so you. So I just want to start with my personal experience. When I first joined the industry working in ad sales actually for Boat International, one of the first pieces of advice that they gave me was you have to join YPY. I'm like, YPY, what's that? So I actually went to the first networking event, and that was at SWOT, I believe. And the first thing when I stepped through that door is I truly felt the warmth and sincerity of the group, and just the fact that everyone there is there to help. You know, it can kind of be a scary industry to get into, and right off the bat, everyone there made me feel so comfortable. So that's one of the continuous main goals of our group, is to make newcomers in the yachting industry feel welcome. And well, how do we do that? We run a fantastic annual program. We hold monthly educational meetings and seminars. This is our seminar for July. We have fantastic volunteer opportunities, which Katie's in control of, and you know, things like spin-a-thon, waterways cleanup, and now we're doing Zoom meetings. So ultimately, we provide the group with opportunities to network with our peers, and you really get out of it what you put into it. So a little bit more about the history of the mentorship program. Some of you may know Andrew Cohen. He came up with the idea about 4 years or so ago, and it just started really grassroots. He picked a couple people who started YPY, John Jarvie, some of the beginners, Amy Knowles, and the idea was to pair longstanding members of the group with the newbies. So in order to help them, you know, with their career moves and make them feel welcome. Since then, Kate Murphy picked up from there, and she created more of a tangible format and progressed it even further. Created a set of interview questions for mentors and mentees. And then she really invested a lot of her own time and energy to sit down with these mentors and mentees and pair up potential matches. So we're really trying to expand the program outward and with a lot of our local organizations, and that's how we got people like the likes of Bob Saxon and Rafael Betts Katie went to local clubs such as Lauderdale Mariners Club, EBA, USSA, NIASIF, and ISS, and it's really taken off from there. So recently I was appointed the mentorship chair in January of this year. I relieved Katie of her 2-year duties on the board, and it's my goal going forward to keep this program alive and thriving, and this webinar is one of the ways that we're going to do that. And I'm so excited to hear what our mentors and mentee panelists have to say. So Diane, should we get started?
Yeah, definitely. You know, when you were talking about how YPY is very focused on helping newcomers and really making people feel welcome, that completely resonated with me, and resonates, I know for sure, with the members of the USSA who are on this webinar right now. This partnership really came to be through the wonderful efforts of 2 of our board members, who many of you on both YPY and USSA sides surely know. It's Zach Savage and Iona Hernandez. The 2 of them brought this mentorship program to the attention of us on the board and said, this is an opportunity that we think the USSA should take. And we jumped at it. We completely agree that helping people feel welcome and helping people grow in their careers really is something that is not only needed in our industry, but something that we all can help bring to the table. And with that in mind, I was doing a lot of research on mentoring and mentorship programs and reflecting a lot on my own experiences actually as a mentor also. I was a mentor this past spring for a student from Fordham University, which is my alma mater. I'm very proud of it. And in thinking about that experience, I saw something that the film director and Superyacht owner, Steven Spielberg, said that just, I think, really resonates. He says, the delicate balance of mentoring someone is not creating them in your own image, but giving them the opportunity to create themselves. So that's what we're really here to help you all understand, how together we can help newcomers in this industry, even people who have a couple of years under their belt, but are still trying to find their way or find a new path, create themselves and recreate themselves. So with that in mind, Bob and Rafael, I really want to have the 2 of you jump in and start talking about your experiences as mentors. Bob, why don't you start, and then Rafael, we can switch to you. So I think the most obvious place to start is, why did you want to become a mentor? What did you feel you could bring to the table?
Well, let me start by saying that right out of college, I taught high school and coached high school baseball. I taught high school English. And if I could have made a living out of teaching, I could have. But I had 3 kids, raising a family, wasn't making enough money to make ends meet, stumbled into the yachting business. But one thing I've discovered about managing a company or running a company and all is that you can't be a boss, you have to be a teacher, okay? And there's a distinct difference. Spielberg was straight on or right on about what he just said, what you said about him. That's interesting. But the urge within me to continue teaching and coaching, and that's how I've run all my companies that I've had and all the companies I've worked within, is more of a teacher and a coach as opposed to being a boss or a manager. That happens to be my style. So I have this burning desire to be out there helping and teaching and coaching. And that's what drove me toward the mentorship program.
Mm-hmm. And Rafael, how about you? What inspired you?
Well, I think that first, let me say good morning to everybody and thanks for having me. It's extremely humbling to be here. So sometimes you wonder if you have anything good to say, and maybe somebody will listen. So yeah, mentoring is really about providing good guidance to individuals who are prepared and ready to make a change. And I think that when you have young people who are looking to progress their careers or progress their lifestyles or their relationships, having a mentor to bounce ideas off and perspective, and not necessarily to make them what you want them, just like we were talking about a second ago. It's really about providing information and wisdom and giving those individuals an opportunity to grow to be the human that they are, because they're not going to be you. You're your own person. And so with that, over the last few years, I've just had this innate inner need to try to share my life experiences with people and hope that I could inspire someone in a positive way. And when I started really focusing on mentoring and inspiring people, it was really about, if I could just change one person's life in a positive manner, I've done more than I would ever imagine I could do. And so through that, it's really just kind of evolved for me. And it's gotten to a point where, you know, I work with about 15 people right now on a monthly basis, and it's extremely gratifying and fulfilling for me. So there's a little bit of a endorphin and boost when you do that with people, but I really enjoy watching people grow and learn and find themselves, because people are amazing. And I think people can do really, really special things. And it's just, when someone invites you into that process with them, it's extremely exhilarating. And so anytime I can offer any advice, and hopefully it's positive and it impacts them positively, I'm all in 100%. So that's really what drives me to do it. And I will thank Amy Knowles for pushing me to do that, because she pushed me hard to get a little bit more involved in YPY and engage with individuals. So that's really what it's about for me. It's really just about watching people grow and inspiring them and hoping that they can make a positive impact.
Great.
Diane, can I comment on something very important that Rafael said?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is this whole process. And it's great to have a couple of my mentees sitting there looking at me right now. We had a session as recent as yesterday, and the comment about, I think it relates to, you're really not a teacher per se, but you are in other words, your vision does not need to be their vision, okay? And if you insist on your vision being their vision, then you're failing in your mentoring efforts. And so the way that mentoring works best is to have them discover, with a little bit of prodding. The three of you set out on a path, and you've given them a flashlight and a magnifying glass, and when they have that aha moment or that eureka moment, that's the most rewarding thing that happens. It's not standing in front of a lecture or in a lecture hall and giving a lecture and everybody takes notes and goes home and you have a test the next day. Mm-hmm. It's not that at all. It is this walking down this path of discovery. And it's like a Platonic method of teaching that talks so well about that you're a guide. You're not a teacher so much, but you're a guide. And I just wanted to mention that because Rafael made that very good point. So that's how it all works so well. And the common mistake is to force your vision on your mentees and say, this is the way it has to be. This is the only way it can work. It can't, it just doesn't work that way. You create a gap.
That's 100%, Bob. And I mean, I think I've done some homework, but, you know, mentoring goes all the way back to Greek mythology and Athena. And I'm going to try to butcher this, but Telemachus, where, you know, he was sent on a journey to go to battle, and he was sent with an individual named mentor. And the mentor was to be, is an experienced or trusted advisor by definition. And so if you really hold on to that and you really pay attention, and if you're on the mentor or the mentee side, you understand it's about providing advice, perspective, possible vision, guidance in that vision, and then you go learn how to apply all of those things and execute. Because if you don't execute them, you'll never fulfill your dreams. Dreams are only dreams until you apply a goal to it. And so that's really, I mean, that really embraces all of it and just holds on to it. And I think that good mentors have that perspective at all times.
Well, Athena, as the goddess of wisdom, that's a good place to begin.
I was thinking it was a good place to start.
Bob, you gave a great analogy that I would love to stick with for a moment. You said you gave your mentees a magnifying glass and was it a flashlight? A flashlight and a magnifying glass. So let's talk about that. Can you give, say, 2 examples of some concrete, you know, flashlights and magnifying glasses, some advice you gave to mentees, or maybe some introductions you made to people that made a difference for them?
Well, I'll speak more in general terms. first of all, you have to understand what their vision is and what they want to do. And it's vital to the process to quantify it. And like, it's like somebody says, gee, I'd like to lose weight. Okay, so how much weight do you want to lose and when do you want to lose it by? And then, so therefore you set a goal with your mentees. And it's a reasonable goal that can be achieved with a reasonable amount of energy and effort and all that. And then along that path, as you go along, you develop your little mini business plans. I'm not saying you sit down and write a doctoral thesis or a business plan, but you have your guideposts that you check in on every once in a while and see how things are going. So, and you introduce ideas that may be related to your failures or your successes, and using those as a base of knowledge and information. As you listen, you must listen to your mentees. You must have them clearly describe to you what they want to do, by what time, and look introspectively toward whether they're capable of doing that or not. And if they are, then you move along with your plan. But if they're not, then you give them the tools and the guidance to help them get to be where they want to be. And I think Richard and Katie can probably relate to a lot of what I'm saying, because they get me telling stories, but and I know I'm a storyteller, okay? But the stories, I'm sure they'll all also suggest back that every one of them has a lesson. And it may relate to something, it's always relating to something that's happened to me in my business life. So you sort of open the door for them and say, here are the potentials, here are the capabilities, and here, try this. And how does this work? And you're sitting one-on-one with them, and they're nodding, not nodding asleep, but nodding in agreement. But they're maybe nodding asleep, I don't know. But you kind of like you open the door and they go in first, okay? And you're right behind them with your hands on their shoulders, giving them that little bit of support that they might need. And you walk that path together. It is definitely a path that you walk together that is based on what their vision is, what their capabilities are, and a plan that might help them achieve what they're trying to do. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, Rafael, what about you? What do you think about, this idea of a flashlight and a magnifying glass, and, helping them along this path? What would you say are some of the things that you've helped them understand?
Well, I think that's exactly right, that you have to truly understand goals and objectives, right? I look at it a little bit differently, in the sense that I think that anyone and everyone can achieve any goal or objective that they set out to do. The challenge is, and where people can be disappointed is that they may want it in 6 months, but it may require 18 months. And so you have to kind of help through that process and understanding what needs to be accomplished in order to achieve those goals and objectives. And so for me, it's very, who are you? Who do you want to be? And is your moral compass defined? And if it is, then does that moral compass align with your goals and objectives for your career path, for example? And so giving guidance, and the flashlight analogy is perfect. The magnifying glass analogy is perfect, because that's really what you're doing. You're just providing insight and giving them a snapshot of what you've already gone through. For example, if you wanted to be a millionaire by 25 or by 30 or by 35 or by 40, and you're 42, you've passed it up. So you kind of have to figure out, if you want to be a millionaire by 25, then you probably should start working and hustling and grinding by the time you're 17. Because anyone who's worked for any period of time knows how hard it is to make that first million. The second one's a little bit easier, and the fifth one gets really easy. But that first one is the challenge. And so you have to understand what it takes to get from point A to point B. And if you're working with somebody who's already achieved those goals and those objectives, and they align with you and they can provide you insight, then you want to listen to that. And then you take that information in as a mentee and you apply it to you and how it works for you. You take the best pieces out, leave the worst ones alone, and you just use that and work with it. And then as a mentor, you can't get your feelings hurt when somebody doesn't do it the way you asked them to do it or the way you suggested, because it's not about you as a mentor, it's about the mentee all the time.
Mhm.
So I think providing that insight and that guidance and just getting people to understand life experiences before having to go through them is a huge deal, because you're providing wisdom that they don't have to go earn themselves. The fact that they made a choice to get with a mentor, the fact that a mentee makes the decision to grow and work with somebody who's more experienced than them, already proves to themselves and proves to you that they want to grow and they want to be better. And at that moment, it's an open door, open book. You can write your story.
Yeah, fair, very fair, very good points. And that also brings up something else, Bob, that you were touching on before about you're bringing your successes as well as the lessons you've learned from your failures to the table. And Rafael, when you were talking about, not getting your feelings hurt when you're working with your mentees, they may not always take your advice. I think that brings us to another really, really good point that I'd love both of you to weigh in on. And maybe Bob, you can weigh in on this first. How can a mentor, first of all, bring those failures to the table, be vulnerable enough, if you will, to admit that you've screwed up in your life. We're all human, without feeling, strange about it or something. And also related to that, how can you kind of take your own ego out of it in terms of not being upset when a mentee doesn't click with you or doesn't take your advice?
Well, first of all, you absolutely, when you first meet with your mentees, you must make it clear you have to cast all emotions aside. And if I hurt their feelings, or if they hurt my feelings, so what? It's all part of this discovery process. You're trying to empower them and enrich them. And what better teacher than the failures that you've had in life? And I've had many. I mean, I made a mistake here 3 months ago. It's like, it's monumental in nature to me personally, not to the industry, but to me. But that's just one of those things. You learn so much from falling down, as they say. You get up and you give it another shot. There is absolutely, not to repeat myself, there's absolutely no better life experience to learn from than failure. You can't be successful all the time. You take a look at how it failed, why it failed, you look at the reasoning behind it and all that, and then you build on that and you move along. But to get to my original statement, egos, forget it. Cast them aside. Your emotions about your baby, your business, you have to set those up on the shelf, okay? Because you may hear some things that you may not want to hear, but the fact is, this is all about the discovery process. So I was mentioning when we were talking yesterday about a failure that I had with a mentee. And I would like to think that it was his fault, because he would absolutely didn't want to hear my advice. He was clinging to the way that he had always done things, yet he was not achieving what he was trying to set out to achieve. Yet no matter what I said to him, his reaction was, well, that's never going to work, so I'm not even going to try it. And so therefore, there was a failure on both sides. It was a failure for me to articulate it in such a manner as to have him understand what the values that might be derived from at least giving it a shot and see how it went. On the other hand, when you can get that kind of, I talked about the way the Marines work, and then when they get a recruit and they break a recruit down, okay, and they have that recruit rid himself of all biases and prejudice and emotions and everything else, so they can build it, so he can build himself or she can build herself up to the model that they want them to be in order to be able to perform according to their standards and such. So if you can't be less than emotional and you can't cast aside any of those biases that you might have and all that, and you get you react negatively to criticism, even though it may be positive criticism, then that's one of the common errors in mentorship that I can see. And that is that instead of talking about what it is totally objectively, emotions start to come into it and biases start to come into it, and the communications break down.
Yeah, very good points. Very good points. Rafael, I know vulnerability is a really big issue in your mind too. How can how can a mentor understand the vulnerability of the mentee and respect it and work with it?
It is a big deal for me. And I think that's the only way you can make progress when you're working with anybody in any scenario, whether you're in a fixed environment, like in our offices on a daily basis, or you're in this mentor-mentee situation. But I think that both parties need to understand that the vulnerability part is really about gaining trust from each other. And what I have found is that mentors get emotionally invested with the success of the mentee. And that can be a bit of a challenge because you've got to be really careful. Like Bob said, you got to keep your ego completely out of it. It is not about your successes. It's about the mentee's successes. And so being vulnerable allows you to really open up and really share stuff that maybe a lot of people don't know about you,
That's the truth.
and so there's a lot of trust that has to happen there. And it goes both ways. It's not just about the mentee coming in, being an open book and saying, hey, spill their guts out and say, this is it. I can't figure it out. I can't get it right. And, a lot of times the response to that is that I look for the effort of perfection every day. If you can wake up every day and try your hardest to be perfect, the effort is the key. I try every day. I barely make it out of my driveway 99% of the time before I make a mistake. Okay. So it's not so much about being perfect throughout the day. It's about the effort. And when you're vulnerable, that's part of it. You've got to be 100% vulnerable to be open to hear the ideas, accept the perspective. You've got to process it. Once you process it, you understand it, you'll be open to asking the right questions, and you'll be open to hearing the right or wrong answers, depending on how they fit for you. Mm-hmm. So vulnerability is just a really, really big piece of it. And it just creates honesty. And then what you're really working towards is the trust. And that's the part that is the hardest to gain for most people. And it's usually the first thing that people will lose for each other is trust. So without vulnerability, I don't think you can truly have trust. And that's where the breakdown comes in. And that's where the challenges come in. And that's where you'll have a separation. And sometimes it's amicable and sometimes it's not, but you'll have a separation because somebody lost a little bit of trust somewhere along the line.
Wow, that's really good, Rafael. That trust thing is huge. And it touches on everything that you're trying to do with your mentees. And it's a two-way thing. You have to have trust in them and they have to have trust in you. And boy, it can break down so quickly and all that. And the other thing I want to mention is that, I sort of touched on this very briefly earlier. And that is what I've noticed about Richard and Katie is that, I may make a suggestion or I may provide them with a tool that I think is going to empower them. And they may have a completely different vision or a different idea, and they immediately come right back at me and say, well, what we've decided to do, Bob, is X, Y, Z. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's really cool. And that's a great idea. And then they, but the thing about that's, they discovered that on their own. Okay. It's again, I'm flipping the flashlight around, but they discovered it on their own, and they're leading the way. Okay. And so that helps build up the trust incredibly when I'm cool enough to be able to say, that's a great idea. I never would have thought of that. Or they're saying to me, yeah, that was, Bob, that was really good. We tried that and that really worked out well. So that trust that builds up. And I rode away from them yesterday from their offices up in Pompano. And I rode away saying to myself, I can't believe I told them some of the things I told them today. It's pretty funny, actually, because I will dig into some of these stories about things that have worked for me and things that haven't worked for me. And then I think, gee, I hope they understood what I was saying. Gee, I hope they appreciate the fact that I'm telling them some stuff that I've probably never told anybody in my entire life about my businesses and things like that. So, man, if you have trust, that is such a productive and such a positive atmosphere to be in. And the ideas just start flowing from both sides, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, good point.
And that's definitely the best moment, isn't it, Bob? At that
it
moment
is.
when that light bulb, that light bulb clicks, and it doesn't have to, like you said, it doesn't have to be your idea. It could be theirs, completely on their own, completely out of left field. But the moment you realized and they realize, and you realize together, that whatever conversations or moments led up to that thought process and allowed them to grow and say, hey, I'm going to step out of the box a little bit here and I'm going to keep moving forward. That's the moment that everyone's working towards.
And Rafael, let's not diminish your role nor my role. And the fact is that they might not have even thought about that if we hadn't been kind of like jiggling them and you know, inspiring them to think a little bit about what their business is and all that. So that's a facilitating role that we provide, you know.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. But, you know, I believe in my heart, in my deepest caverns of my soul, that humanity is this close from being just freaking awesome every day about everything. So it's like, just to be along for the ride and be able to say, you know, hey, I saw that happen. I watched it happen. You know, I got to meet with somebody that I've worked with here a couple of days ago, and individual completely changed roles, completely changed industries. And the moment I saw her, I was like, wow, you look freaking amazing. You look so happy and so just joyous. And it was just about making that switch that she had all this fear about for a long period of time, finally just triggered and got enough courage to say, okay, I'm ready. I'm mentally ready. I'm emotionally ready. I'm physically ready. I'm going to go make this move. And those are the moments. That's really what gives you the gratification and the quantification that you're doing the right thing.
It's a pretty cool thing. It's a pretty cool feeling. Yep.
I want to jump in real quick because Lisa Samuels posted a comment that I think everybody would appreciate if you haven't seen it. She said that she had a mentor who used the 3 C's, as they put it. It's consultant, counselor, listening, key point, and cheerleader for support and enthusiasm. That's 100% what's needed in a mentor. Let's see. We want to take a couple of questions while we're talking, just in case there's something here that one of you can chime in on. Okay, we do have a question about mentees. Well, yeah, actually, you know what, Melissa, sorry, I'll save this question for the end because I think you might actually have your question answered by Julia and the mentees. But one real quick last question for Bob and Rafael before we turn things over to Julia and our phenomenal mentees who are here. What did you learn as a professional yourself in the process of being a mentor? Rafael, why don't you start?
I think I've learned a lot more patience. I've always been very, very driven. You know, I grew up in Northern California in a little farming town, so we didn't have a whole lot. And I knew at a pretty early age what I needed to do in order to help put food on the table. And so I've always been very, very driven. And it took me a long time to figure out why I was driven, in the sense of, am I doing it for me? Am I doing it for my family? Am I doing it for some other odd reason? And I realized, for me personally, I'm a competitor and I love to compete. And I feel that every day I have to compete. And so it took me a long time to figure out what that was for me. And I've finally figured out that as long as I compete with myself and I compete with my self-growth and I continue to work on being a better human being every day, then I fulfill that need. And so working with individuals and watching them grow and watching them learn is always a lesson for me. It's always, because everyone is so different. Everyone is so unique that your communication skills get better, your understanding gets better, your caring gets better. All of those things that we think of as a good human, all of those things get better as long as you're vulnerable and you're open to all of that. And so for me, I would like to think that I'm a much different human being today than I was a year, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. I won't go any more than that. But it's just been a lot of growth for me, watching people grow, learning from their growth, watching their trials and tribulations. A lot of times they'll go through a challenge that I've never been through. And so I get to experience and get the wisdom from their learning process or their successes and how I apply that to my stuff as well. So it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Bob, how about you? What has it done for you as a professional?
Well, you know, you kind of get to where you are in the industry and you start to take this attitude on that I've been successful, and therefore it's my way or the highway at times. You sometimes your ego gets in the way. But in working with the mentees that I've had the outstanding opportunity to work with, it's affirmed to me, it's an affirmation process for me, because they're enlightening me. And watching them think and watching them go through this process of discovery and all that is such a rewarding thing. And it reminds me to be humble and assume a certain amount of humility when you're working with people and all that, because, you know, what you might think is the best way to go may not be the best way to go. And you can only, you're being mentored by your mentees in a certain way as they begin to reveal certain things, ideas, and concepts to you that you work together as a team to accomplish and all that. So it has had me, believe it or not, take on a certain sense of, as I call it, humility. But those points were also well made by Rafael.
Yeah, they're definitely teaching you how to be humble. They're teaching you how to be accepting of people. There's no doubt about that. And believe it or not, it's, you know, let me go back to that for 1 second. Probably the biggest thing that it's taught me is how to communicate with an individual who is 20 or 30 years younger than I am, because that can be a challenge. Sometimes we get caught up in our ways and we think we know how to communicate, and there's always new ways to learn how to communicate. I mean, I never thought I was going to have a TikTok, but I do. So there you go.
I'm not even on TikTok, Rafael. What's going on here?
You're just a Renaissance man, Rafael. Just admit it.
You know.
Well, on that note, I would like to turn things over to Julia so we can hear from the mentees about how it has made a huge difference for them.
Yeah, great. So mentees, are you ready for your pop quiz?
Hey, I'm turning the volume up, Richard. So
he's recording now.
Yeah, right. No, I'd really just like to start by saying, I mean, Bob and Rafael, thank you. I've written so many notes right now. You know, you really do have to kind of cast those emotions aside, and there is a vulnerability aspect. So I want to ask our mentees, you know, what enticed you the most about joining this program? Because you really have to be open-minded to the experience, and there is a time commitment. So how did you guys mentally prepare yourself for this type of, you know, working relationship? What were some of your goals and objectives there? Basically, let's say, what do you want to shine the flashlight on?
Well, maybe I can start. It's Brant here with Craft Yacht Management, and I think the biggest roadblock for mentorship and for finding a mentor is exactly what we're talking about. It's that vulnerability. It's admitting that you could use some help. And I think the go-to voice in your head as a young person is, you know, I've got things figured out. I'm not like all the other millennials. I've got the best ideas. I've got the best people skills. I'm going to be a yachting industry titan, and you should definitely work with me or definitely hire me. And I think compounding on that, if you're a business owner, a young business owner like I am, and like Richard and Katie are, it's doubly so, where somebody asks you how your business is going, the answer is always excellent. You know, new clients, we're killing it. Again, you should hire me or you should work with me. When the truth can often be much more complex, much more layered. You may have just landed a big client. You may be also in the midst of a big lawsuit. You may be having to let someone go for the first time, or let someone go who's been with you for a long time. So I think getting past some of those hurdles that we inherently have as younger professionals, and being able to admit that you could use some help and you could benefit greatly from the wisdom and the experiences of someone a little bit older.
That's great, Brant. Thank you. Katie and Richard?
Yeah, I mean, for same as kind of Brant, we started, you know, very early into our business, learning about the program. I think we were only a few months into our business when we actually heard about this program through another YPYer, and she was like, this has, you know, really been a game changer for me. So we put it forward. I mean, for my case, you know, I was completely new to the industry, maritime yachting entirely. I was leaving a job in the humanitarian community. So I kind of knew right away, like I'm an open, fresh for any ideas and any suggestions, and any kind of insights or wisdom would be welcome. Richard's, you've had experience you can kind of share, but
yeah, a little bit more background in the marine industry. I just wanted to start out saying, just in terms of the COVID stuff for everyone listening, Katie and I are married and we live together, so this is still COVID friendly. Yeah. But I mean, in terms of why we sought out the mentor program, I think that successful people, like the more information you get, it's a very small group at the top there, and to build on kind of what Bob was saying with the Marines and what Rafael was saying with achieving or striving for perfection. The Marines have a saying that everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there. And
that's good.
It's basically about everybody wants to have that thing that they want, those nice things, but not everybody wants to do what it takes to achieve those things. And for me and Katie, it's more of a, we know we have the drive, and we know that we have the ability to get to those places and to achieve those things. And we needed someone with the experience and who's already kind of been down that road to help guide us there, and kind of help us avoid the pitfalls that we might be coming across.
Cool. So, everyone's got a different playbook or formula that works for them. And while we have Katie and Richard and Bob on here, I kind of want to know, how do you guys make it work? After you shook hands and said, great, let's do this. Let's be each other's mentor and mentees. Do you guys meet once a week, once a month? How does it work for you?
Yeah, so we've kind of, I guess, worked it out. We always like meeting in person. So the very first time we met with Bob, we decided to meet for breakfast, which was lovely. We met for about an hour and a half or so just to kind of get to know each other. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we really tried to meet, once a month if we can. I mean, there's always different, boat shows going on or different events and things like that. So we try to kind of roughly work that out. But for the most part, it's about once a month in person for about an hour and a half. And, we do a check-in, and it's kind of, there's always like some topics. So, yesterday for us was growth management, and we talk about that. And like Bob says, it's a bit of storytelling, it's a bit of sharing. It's kind of a nice check-in to say where, from last time or, other sessions, like where have we kind of gotten, or, any successes or things like that. And yeah, it's really, I think the in-person's been, for us, really fantastic. I think I get more out of it. I mean, Bob, you were kind of sharing that it's helpful for you too, just to kind of see how we're kind of taking it in. And
now during the COVID period, are you meeting in person, or is it via Zoom, or are you working that out?
We've exchanged emails a few times, and then we did have an in-person meeting as well.
Cool.
And we were as safe as we could with the COVID regulations, with it, the social distancing and all.
Yeah, the last few months we've been doing, I think, mostly just email exchanges back and forth, kind of figuring out, with the circumstances changing and different things like that. So we've been a bit more online the last few months. So.
I think the other good thing that the monthly meetings does for us is it gives us a chance to work on what we discussed in the previous meeting. So one of the really good things that Bob does for us is that he uses kind of a philosophical approach, the Platonic method, and like thinking about things from first principles. So one thing that people will often do is they'll come across a problem and then they'll say, oh, well, we have to do something else because this is a problem. Whereas he might suggest thinking about it differently, breaking the problem down and then giving us like a different way to look at it. And kind of, he won't solve the problem for you, but he kind of gives you the spark to come up with an idea yourself, and then kind of take that. And then, the next time we meet, we'll talk about what we were doing amongst ourselves to kind of, overcome that issue.
Yeah, quick comment. The subject yesterday was success and all that. And I think the first comment I made to them, and it raised their eyebrows and they rolled their eyes back in their head, was that as we met yesterday morning, I said, well, one of the quickest ways to go out of business is to be very successful. And they went, whoa, okay, well, we weren't expecting that. But the fact was that I was leading into how to manage the growth and how to measure the growth and how to set your objectives and your goals and all that. And let the finances talk to you about how well you're managing said growth. But If I can just throw something else in here, and that is, look, okay, here, I just put, you see this? Can you see that?
SWOT.
SWOT. So everybody knows about SWOT. But it is a basic management tool that Rafael and I were talking earlier about breaking down and looking introspectively. The SWOT, for those of you that are looking and don't know what SWOT is, it's like a 2x2 matrix kind of thing where you have the letters. The acronym is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so that is the basic introspection that Richard and Katie went through at the very beginning when we met for coffee. And I said, I want you to do a SWOT analysis. Now, that doesn't mean they have to go home and they have to sit down and do homework and bring it back to me and let me check it and all that. It is more of, okay, so where are you in your business right now? How strong are you in this area? How weak are you in this area? What are the opportunities and what are the threats in terms of competition and all that? That's a great way for anybody that even if you're not involved in a mentorship program, and you're sort of like in a rut maybe in your business, or you're in a position that doesn't seem to be going forward, or you're a business owner that it's not clicking, do a SWOT analysis. And it can hurt because you're going to sit down and you're going to really you're going to look inward, and then you're going to learn things about yourself that you may not like to hear. But the fact is, you have to understand those things before you can go forward and build yourself back up to where you want to be. So that's where we started. If Katie and Richard remember that, was with that simple SWOT analysis. And you can Google it and bring it up, and it's easy to do.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, going through the motions and going through SWOT analysis, Katie and Richard, do you guys find that doing it together, because there's two of you, that you find yourself more accountable through the process?
Yeah, I would say that, even having a mentor monthly, doing those check-ins is, I'd say, one of the biggest kind of things you get out of it is just holding yourself accountable. And then obviously, because we're partners, you have somebody kind of bounces ideas off of and kind of do a check-in. It's like, okay, well, this is what I think I'm projecting or what I think I'm doing well. And then you can kind of gauge, it's like, well, is that what you're giving off or not? But I think it's a huge, part of this relationship is the accountability. It's accountable, you to your, fellow mentee, but also to your mentor. It's, the things we're discussing, are you implementing them? It's kind of, I think the way, we've been going with Bob is it's really just like an evaluation kind of process. There's really, he doesn't operate from a criticism perspective, and there's really nothing but negative about this experience. It's just be open to evaluation. You're constantly, thinking about how you're doing things and always kind of tweaking it or adjusting it as needed, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely true. I mean, one of the hardest things to do is to view yourself through the same window that other people view you. So you might think that you're projecting something, and people would tell you something totally different about how they feel around you. So one of the things that is helpful for us is that I might do a SWOT analysis on something, and I would say these are my strengths, and then Katie might tell me well, maybe that's not such a strong suit of yours, or these are my weaknesses. And she would say oh no, you're actually really good at that, something that. And it's one way for almost an immediate feedback on a SWOT analysis. So then we can kind of talk about it amongst ourselves, and then we can kind of grow from there. So it definitely, I think, helps having the two of us, spitball ideas back and forth.
Yeah, Robert Burns said that if only God had given us the ability to see ourselves as others see us. So you've got a nice check and balance system sitting right next to you, which really works in your favor, okay? So.
Yeah, you have a very, very unique situation, which is very, very beneficial to you.
Right.
To both of you.
Right.
So.
And that's not to say that, we can't have multiple mentors throughout our lives. Brant, you have one, but, besides yours, do you have anyone else in your life that you seek advice from? And do you think that advice differs from the type of relationship you have with that person?
Obviously, as appearing on a mentee panel, I certainly believe in the value of mentorship, and the youngest of three brothers, and they're quite a bit older than me. So I've kind of always seen value in an old perspective, and certainly both of my brothers, I get a lot of inspiration and guidance from, and it's definitely different than the type of advice you get from, you know, sort of an industry person like Andrew Hyde, my current mentor. But, you know, I think both are beneficial in different ways. Andrew, you know, he runs a legal business called Luxury Law Group, and, you know, beyond, I don't try to get free legal advice from him just because that feels a bit cheesy to me. I try to focus more on how he's built his business and how he's been able to be so successful in building up the relationships and resources that he has.
Cool. So I'll ask one final question, and then maybe we jump to audience questions. But you know, one of the biggest lessons for me I learned very early on in my career from one of my mentors was to own up to my mistakes. You know, recognize when you've messed up, and not only own up to it, but provide a solution to fix it. So what's the single best piece of advice that you've been given from your mentor, and how have you applied it to your career thus far? Who wants to go? It's a big one.
Oh, you want to take it first?
Brant, you want to go?
Passing the buck.
I'm listening.
Bob, they're
intently
passing
now.
the buck.
I'm listening intently.
I'm taking notes first.
I told you it's a pop quiz.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just a takeaway, you know, for everyone.
I'll start with a story, because I shared this with Bob yesterday. You know, for our meeting, you know, we were kind of getting everything ready, and I was looking over our P&L, profit and loss reports, and kind of doing an inventory of where we were at, since we hadn't seen each other in a while. And the very first meeting that we ever had with Bob, when we were meeting for breakfast, he shared with us his kind of personal story about when he was first getting into the industry, and it has a lot to do, I think, with like the power of positive thinking and goal setting. And so I think the number one takeaway for me is really set an objective and then work towards it. So in this story he shared with us, he had a personal figure that he wanted to personally earn, and so he wrote it down in a black marker on a post.
Rather modest.
Yeah, and he posted it like somewhere visible, like in his visor, and every day he would see that you know, amount, that figure that he was working towards. And after doing this enough times, you know, he was putting this positive projection out into the universe, I guess. And sure enough, he got the next career opportunity he got was that figure. So with that in mind, after we met that first time, you know, I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to set something really ambitious for us and do that. And it's a technique that a lot of famous people have used. You know, Jim Carrey's used this before with Dumb and Dumber and things like that. So I was like, this is something I want to do. So I got home and I got a red Post-it note and a black Sharpie, and I wrote a figure down. And it's been about 2 years since we started this. And looking over the profit and loss yesterday, I was like, that's the figure. So it was just super rewarding, super inspiring. And it was just really fun, because it was something that, you know, he had said to us day one, and it was something that, you know, maybe takes a little, you know, you're just constantly hustling and making it work. But once you get that kind of like check, it's really powerful. So I'd say that's been our biggest takeaway, and kind of like the best, you know.
I think the other thing too is at our first meeting, Bob told us about a book that we should read, and it's kind of a philosophy that the two of us have, and I guess he shares with us. The book is As a Man Thinketh.
Wow.
It's by James Allen, and we took it and we read through it, and it's basically a guide of right mind, right action. If you go into things with the right mindset, and you go into things thinking about them the right way, you'll achieve the right results from whatever you're trying to do. So if you have a positive attitude towards something, and you're always trying to do something good with your actions, you know, like don't walk past the garbage, like pick it up and throw it away, like just little things like that. If you practice those daily habits of the little things, then the big things will start to fall into place.
The law of positive attraction, and
That
book we've shared with our team, actually. So we're not the only.
That's a great reference. I had totally forgotten about that. As a Man Thinketh. I first discovered it sitting in my a chair in the dentist office, and he had a poster up on the wall that talked about it, and it said "As a Man Thinketh" by James Allen. And I went out and got it, and of course, years and years and years and years later, got it to you guys. And it all relates back to, not only is it positive thinking, but it's also about fixing your mind on that goal that you want. And sure, I wrote down, and Katie didn't mention it, but it was I was trying to make $50,000 a year. And I said, I said, if I could only make $50,000 a year, I will have arrived. I'll never need anything else in my life. That'll be everything. I'll be there. So yeah, I put the little index cards up all over the place. Every time I opened my medicine cabinet in the morning to shave, there was $50,000 flashed in front of me. And damned if some guy didn't come along a couple of years later and said, here's what I'm going to pay you, $50,000. And I went, that's it. Okay, I've arrived and all that stuff. But this whole thing about establishing goals so that it's a quantifiable thing. You can measure your progress against what you set your goal out to be. And Katie said, I think that I'm not going to mention the figure, but Katie mentioned it as probably a gross income figure, I believe it was. In other words, you want to generate that kind of income for your company. Lo and behold, a year and a half later, you hit it, okay? But it sets it in your mind. It allows your subconscious to work on it, and it propels you forward to taking the steps to get that. You may not be aware of the process, but it's working inwardly, okay, and all that. So that's really cool that you brought that up. Thanks. That's a good reminder.
And if I can interject here for a second, I think the biggest thing that people are challenged with is believing in themselves and believing that they're worthy enough, capable enough, smart enough, educated enough, hungry enough to go get these things. And I always kind of refer back to when you're born to win. Humans are absolutely born to win. When you're born and you're pulled from the womb, nobody holds that baby and says, oh, look, it's a failure. Nobody says that. They grab the baby and they say, look at this baby. This baby's going to change the world. This is the most beautiful person on the face of the planet. This person is going to be president one day. This person is going to be an NFL star. This president's going to be a Fortune 500 CEO. No, you're born to win. And people somewhere along the line, people have some experience that puts doubt and makes them think about, maybe I'm going to fail. And that's the opposite mindset. You got to have the right mindset. And if your mindset is, I'm going to write this number down, I'm going to write this goal down, I'm going to write this objective down, and you keep looking at it every day and you focus and you focus and you focus and you focus, the path will get laid for you. The path will show its way. The flashlight will shine in the right direction. The magnifying glass will get used when it needs to be used, because you now believe that you can and that you will meet those goals. That's the biggest challenge I find with people when you're working with people, is that they don't believe that they're built to win. And the reality is that you are built to win. As a human being, you are built to win, period.
Rafael, you should have been a preacher. You would have made a lot more money.
The other important mentor can give to you also is that, they can share their experiences, and from that you learn, it's okay to fail sometimes. Not everything you do is going to be, a success. And that doesn't mean that you're not successful as a person. Like you can pick yourself up from that and move forward and learn from it and become better. And the next thing you do is going to be even better because of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Your being of a human is not defined by what you do for a living.
Absolutely.
Well, we're at 12:30.
Yeah, we're actually right up against our time slot, so we do want to make sure we have time for Q&A. If anybody does have a question, please pop it into the chat box. There's one here right now that came in earlier, which I can address because it's a good point to do so. The question is there going to be, or how can a mentee go about finding a mentor that's right for them? We're actually, with YPY, USSA and YPY are actually having a mentorship program where there are going to be mentees applying through YPY and mentors applying through USSA, and we will pair you up. Mm-hmm. Our membership team on the USSA side, which is Zach Savage and Rick Thomas, together with Kitty McGowan and Julie Sack, are going to be looking at the applications and thinking about who these people are and the wonderful skills they have. And on the YPY side, Julia and their leadership team are going to be doing the same. thinking about the skills that the person has and the pain points that they have, and come together and find the right match to make. So we will circulate links to all of you by email within the next several days, probably after the holiday weekend, so that you can sign up, because we would love to have an embarrassment of riches in terms of mentors and mentees. Let's see, we have a couple more questions here. Okay, well, here's actually, this is another question that I think we just addressed. It's in the current state of affairs, given Corona, how can you go about finding a mentor? With the mentorship program, we understand that it can be challenging for some people. You may not feel comfortable getting in touch, getting together personally. We also recognize that some members are not in the same states. For example, the USSA, we have members all across the country. I happen to be in New Jersey. So there are going to be times where Zoom is, or some other, video connecting will be the way to go. But if you are in the same regions, by all means, try as much as possible to meet physically, even if it's social distancing, in person, because it makes a tremendous difference. You really need that personal human connection. Okay, well, here's a good question. I'll leave it open to anybody actually to jump in, because I think both our mentors and our mentees here can weigh in on this. How do you help in decision making when there's uncertainty? It's a great question. There's a lot of doubt on the part, particularly of mentees, but I think mentors sometimes can have doubts too. So who wants to jump in and help answer that?
That's a hard one. Let's let Bob answer it.
I was going to defer to you, Rafael.
I guess it depends on where the uncertainty is coming from. And this goes back to kind of what we started with today was, the vulnerability and understanding the partnership between the mentor and the mentee, because you need to understand where the uncertainty is coming from. If the uncertainty is coming from a lack of confidence, then it's the mentor's responsibility to help boost that confidence, as long as they're making a decision which is going to show them progress. Doesn't mean success. Just because they make a decision, sometimes people have to fail in order to get better. You're going to enjoy your wins a lot better after a bunch of losses. If you're always winning, then they won't be so exciting anymore. So it just depends on where the uncertainty is coming from. If it's coming from, it's because the climate is unsteady and the financial market's unsteady and you're trying to make a financial decision, that's going to be a very difficult one for anyone to answer, because you don't know what the financial climate is going to be in 24 hours in the current state of affairs. But if it's about emotions and you understand you have a good relationship, I think you can work through that pretty easily.
I think I kind of like, I'm not sure what exactly the question, the intention of the question, but certainly this particular marketplace that we're in right now is creating a ton of uncertainties. And however, there's a certain positive thing about knowing that your uncertainties are being shared by everybody. And so there are uncertainties create opportunities as well. And in our particular marketplace, you may all be surprised to learn. Those of you that are out there right now that are looking in and your companies are laying off people, and your job may be in jeopardy or whatever. There's two things. One, try to figure out a way to make yourself vital to your organization. And that is to be doing things outside what might be in your job description, learn another language, take some business courses, whatever it might be. Make yourself very vital and an integral part of your organization. So when it comes down to the decision as to whether to dismiss somebody or that, well, we can't because she's so vital, she's so important to us and all that. Even if you're what might be, I don't mean to minimize the role, but let's say you're the receptionist. There's all kinds of things that you can do to make yourself vital to the organization. The second thing that may astound you right now, and it creates opportunities, is that boat sales are on a record-breaking pace. It defies logic. It is counterintuitive, but the yacht business right now is unbelievable. The demand is far outpacing supply at all levels. And yacht chartering is through the ceiling. And people are just, the Americans especially, this desire to get out and enjoy and experience nature and all that is driving this market to new highs that it's never seen before. So look toward those markets. I think companies that are laying people off are really short-sighted, because the opportunity, even though we're in this midst of this pandemic, there will be solutions that will be introduced soon. And even though we're having all these issues and all that, what is it? Boat sales are through the roof. Chuck Cashman was talking about the other day about with MarineMax. He said they are even having difficulty coping with the inquiries for the boats that they have for sale. They have so many inquiries. So look to that market. And as I discussed with Richard and Katie yesterday, take advantage of the fact that boat sales are incredible right now, and yacht chartering is incredible right now. And the more people that are buying boats, the more people need management, more people need Pantropic to work on their engines, and on and on and on and on and on. So those of you out there in this midst of this uncertainty, there are opportunities right now that you need to take advantage of. Don't fall into the gloom and doom. Get out there and be very positive about seeking your fortune in that way.
I think in terms of the mentor-mentee relationship too, it ultimately the decision comes down to the mentee. It's the mentor, I guess, is there to give you advice, but they're not there to spoon feed things to you and make all of your decisions for you. They're just there to kind of guide you, and then the mentee ends up having to be the one that makes the decision.
Yeah, great points.
Yeah,
Great points,
and,
everybody. You know, we could go on for probably hours, it seems like, on this topic, because there's so much enthusiasm in this virtual room right now. And as much as we would love to, we really do have to wrap up. So thank you, thank you, thank you to our phenomenal panelists today, and to Julia for being a terrific co-host too. We really appreciate this. The USSA and YPY are so excited about joining together for this program. We will follow up with all of you with an email with everyone's contact information, all of our speakers' contact information. So feel free to ask more questions and you know, kind of pick our brains. That's what we're all here for. Thank you also again to Marine Group Boatworks, my apologies, for making this programming possible. And have a safe and happy holiday weekend, and don't forget to tune in next week for our next education seminar, all about using LinkedIn for advertising. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye now.
Bye.
Happy 4th of July.
Thanks.
Bye.